And welcome back. Start Lighthouse is a not-for-profit that's actually supporting lifelong literacy through a two-generational approach by creating access through customized literacy kits, literacy programming with a racial justice lens, and fundamental workshops for families. The organization is hosting a virtual Decolonizing Education Hackathon, and the hackathon is actually a commitment to creating anti-racist spaces and addressing disparities within the educational system. And here now to share a little bit more about the event and exactly what's going to happen this upcoming weekend is the executive director and co-founder of Start Lighthouse, Rina Madhani, and then also co-founder of Start Lighthouse, Anya Morales. And welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much for
Thanks
having us.
us.
We're really happy to be here.
Yeah, it's an important conversation to have, particularly in the area of education. And when we look right now, we can say there's a lot of educational disparities. And I know for Start Lighthouse, you guys really are trying to pay particular attention to a couple of key areas. So I'll let you take it away with a little bit about what's getting ready to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to preface, right now, our education system is just facing unimaginable challenges. It's required educators, family members, caregivers, and students to really become these fearless problem solvers and continue forward. Our education system wasn't designed to be taking place in a remote or hybrid setting, but we've had to pivot. And when we're thinking about decolonizing our education system, I think it's really important for us to note that our education system wasn't actually fully integrated until the 70s. And that being said, we have an education system that was never designed to be inclusive. It was always intended to separate people of color and white people. And that's what leads us to hosting a virtual decolonizing education hackathon, because we want to cultivate a space and a community where educators, administrators, practitioners, students, family members, caregivers from all across the country can come together and start focusing on the issues of justice that are actively affecting our students of color.
With the reforms that have been made, there have been great reforms in the criminal justice reforms that have been made recently. But talk to us about mitigating that school to prison pipeline, because I know that's one of the passions that you guys will be addressing. How do you feel that things are going in that area? Have we made significant progress?
I think personally, in my opinion, no, I don't think we've made significant progress, especially when we look at New York City when it comes to charter schools. Instead of putting money into public education systems, we end up just defunding it constantly, and we continue to fund money into the police department, NYPD. Specifically, we saw that with this year's budget for NYC. Mayor de Blasio said he was defunding NYPD by $1 million, but instead he put that into schools, but it's for more security, to have more cops in schools, and that's not going to help, because it shows that when we have police officers in school, we don't it hasn't done anything. They haven't stopped any shootings. It just criminalizes students of color more. Especially when I think especially at charter schools, like my own experience working at some, we have restorative justice practices that are not actually utilized fully or actually consistently used in the school. And we see a lot of students of color, especially young Black boys, who get suspended more. We see a lot of females, a lot of Black girls get suspended more, and we don't talk about that because a lot of time it's focused on male students. We have kindergarteners, first and second graders getting suspended for tantrums. That's not how school should be. School should be a place for children to learn and feel loved and respected and feel safe. And I'm not a parent, but I would not want to send my student right now to a school that they don't feel safe at. And I think it's really important that we have a chance to hear from the teachers and admin people who are at the front lines and dealing with these situations, how they think it should be de-escalated, because a lot of the times school admin and staff, teachers, they don't really get a say in these policies. They're just told what's happening and to follow through with it.
Rina, when we talk about the environment, I think, one of the things that can be talked about is these spaces. And I know they're talking about creating learning spaces for dialogue and solutions. How do we go about creating these spaces that can actually be more fruitful for students?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it goes back to what Anya mentioned. educators need to be a part of this conversation. They need to be a part of the solution development that goes into it. And oftentimes, their lived experiences and what they're actually seeing in their respective classrooms aren't actually being addressed by policymakers. Policymakers are so removed from what's actually happening in the classroom. And that's the whole purpose of us as an organization taking that active effort to bring educators to the forefront of this conversation and allowing them to feel empowered to make those changes. And I think those changes can only come about when we all work together collectively. Because clearly what we have happening in our education system for a very long time, it's just not working. And given the pandemic, I think it's just really magnified the disparities that we continue to see.
Yeah. I want to talk about the racial justice component too, because that's a separate program that you guys have. And so talk to us a little bit about the racial justice program and what you're looking to achieve.
So in regards to our racial justice literacy program, Anya and I have been educators in the South Bronx, and we've had our respective lived experiences in the classroom. And for us as educators, it was incredibly important for us to think about how can we cultivate a space and a community where our students can start having conversations about race and racism in a developmentally appropriate and relevant manner. Based on both of our respective experiences, when we've been teaching, we've been handed a very Eurocentric, whitewashed curriculum. And that is just not relevant. And it's also just not applicable to the students that we're serving. We need to be finding stories that really celebrate their resilience and their joy. And that was really the purpose of us trying to cultivate a racial justice literacy program for our students to have these conversations and to have the space and really be empowered with that belief that they're never too young to stand up against injustice.
Yeah. Anya, talk to me about how do you feel in that regard? Because when you talk about racial justice, the way history is presented, we know that history is not accurate, and we know that it's not always well balanced and presented. Talk to us about what that would mean in the life of a student to have that kind of balance, to have that kind of representation.
I mean, scientifically, I'm currently in grad school to be like I know the facts that when we do have a curriculum and we're teaching students that they are able to see themselves in this and they can also celebrate people of color doing amazing things. Because a lot of the times when we look at U.S. history, we started with just talking about slaves. Black people were slaves, we had segregation, civil rights movement, and then everything went back and everyone's happy and racism doesn't exist. And that's not how it is at all. Like, why are we teaching that to students? We should also teach like the joy of all these like amazing scientists, mathematicians, inventors who are people of color, and they need to have these stories told. Scientifically, when we have research has shown that when children are exposed to that, even when they're teenagers, that actually helps them learn better. They're able to like remember the material more sufficiently and actually proves critical thinking because they see themselves in these roles and they know they could be more than what's happening in their life right now, and that they'll remember this and like want to learn about it. And it does increase like their ability to learn more and be on grade level. Because I understand, like, especially Rina and I have talked about this, like, when we reflect back on our own time as a student, like, we don't learn about those things. Like, I was lucky to be able to go to college, and now I'm in grad school, that I was able to cultivate the skills to critically think about these situations and have my opinion about it, but I had to do that on my own. And I don't think any child should have to deal with that. I feel like you can have these conversations in kindergarten like you can have them in 12th grade.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing with us, Anya and Rina. I know you got a major weekend coming up. I want to wish you the best for this upcoming weekend as you tackle some of these hard issues. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks for having us.
All righty. Well, listen, I want to let you know, if you are watching and you want more information about this upcoming weekend, the events that are taking place, please visit their website at startlighthouse.org. Once again, their website is startlighthouse.org. And we encourage you, don't go anywhere. We still have more open coming up. We'll be right back right after this.